Good Sunday evening to you, everybody, and welcome into another film review episode of the Barking Brown Show. I'm Jacob, Mr. Technical Difficulty over there, Casey Kinnaman and Nick Carnes down below. We're brought to you as always by our friends over at Homage Apparel. Nick's orange shirt is more oranger than mine, but either way,
oranger.
The shirts are rocking. Go out, check out our friends over at Homage Apparel. Get yourself hooked up. 98 days between us and Cleveland Browns football as of the recording of this episode. So make sure you check out Homage Apparel and get yourself ready for the season. Gentlemen, how are we this Sunday morning?
I'm alive. I'm here. Not usually on Sunday mornings I get up and try to get some exercise in, but it was raining down here, so it's been slow going, man. And then obviously my technical difficulties preclude me. I am not proficient technically, and but I'm here, and you can hear me and see me, so I think that's a win.
It definitely is a win, and I'll tell you something else, Casey. I could get used to the board behind you, man.
Yeah.
I love the messages they make.
Well, hopefully this is the last day you see me in the garage, but in case of emergency, I got this.
Yeah, you now know exactly how to put together a garage setup, so you don't have to really, completely panic if for some reason your normal setup's not ready. It's, it is what it is. So you can just do what I do and just do a really unflattering angle on a phone, like you're like this, you're like looking down and like, oh, what's going on, guys? Well, we really wanted to say thank you for a lot of growth over this last week, and the most valuable thing you can give somebody is some of your time, and a lot of you continue to give us some of your time, so we appreciate that. Today we're almost done with the film review draft pick episode series as we hit the first of the 2 7th round picks today. Myles Harden. You go back on YouTube, you can find all of those videos for the first 5 picks or first 4 picks leading up, and this coming week will be the Jawan Briggs to wrap up that series. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm going to go on YouTube, if you're on YouTube, and I'm going to create a playlist with those so that we can put that stuff on there in case you want to watch that series. So we're on Myles Harden. We're going to talk about him. What I want to say, I've heard Jake Burns over at Browns Film Breakdown bring this up a couple of times when talking about Myles Harden, and I do feel like it's necessary. There is a lot of buzz around this player. There is a lot of things to like about this player. There are some concerns with this player. Obviously, he goes in the 7th round. You understand that. I want to remind you to temper some of your expectations for a 7th round pick as a rookie. Mm-hmm. Now, should there be injuries, should say Cam Mitchell goes down and then maybe Denzel goes down for a beat or something, will he then become the nickel corner or something like that if there's a couple of injuries? Sure. I think he'll play special teams. I think he'll make an impact there. But it reminds me of one of my biggest misses with David Bell. I thought David Bell's a guy that gets open and catches the football. I thought, well, he's going to be a volume guy. They're just going to feed him. Well, he wasn't ready. He was a rookie. He was a 3rd round pick, and they just haven't put him on the field a ton, so he's not had those opportunities. I think you're going to get that with Myles Harden. He's a good football player. I think Myles Harden will start games for this team in 2025 and 2026. But he was a 7th round pick. He was a 7th round pick for the reason, so let's not get super crazy about it.
I just think my baseline is higher than it would be for a typical 7th round pick, in that I expect Myles Harden to make the Browns roster. And I don't feel like that's something that
no. You should feel that. You should feel that.
But that's not super common for 7th round picks, right? Like there's a bunch of those guys that don't make, there's a ton of guys that were drafted in the 7th round this year that are not going to make the final roster of the team that drafted them, right? But I think it speaks to the value that we're going to get into, that there is a very real expectation there that hey, Myles Harden very well could and should make this roster.
Yeah, and it's not like he's going into a room that isn't already stacked. So to make the roster going into that room speaks pretty highly of the player. And to your point, I think there's a 7th round pick we'll probably talk about next week that I don't really expect to make the 53.
Yeah,
and I think that's par for the course when you have a pretty good roster. That 7th round picks are dart throws, And Harden, I like the play style. I like the way he will fit into this room, because they have outside guys. They're trying to find who is the nickel of the future, and I think that's a solid dart throw.
Yeah, and it's really interesting too with Harden, because you're talking about a guy the last 2 years that's played 50 snaps in the slot, but the thing that I come back to first with him is I'm a big NFL Stock Exchange podcast listener, and Myles Harden was the first guy that they listed on day 3 as their part of their day 3 my guys. It was Myles Harden. Connor Rogers is very high on him, and I respect his opinion quite a bit. And he said, I think he's a starting slot guy. Maybe not this year, but he's going to be a starting slot guy. And, he only played 50 in the slot, but sometimes you see that. You see corners go to safety. You see outside corners go to inside and that sort of thing. And that is where his skill set does make the most sense. So he's about 6 foot tall, 200 pounds, somewhere around there. Really long corner. I think his size and length is exactly what you want out of a corner, in my opinion. I think he's aggressive. I think he fits right in the Browns system because he's an aggressive player. I think that his trigger on both run plays and screen plays specifically, he will blow those plays up. Like, he has a pretty good feel for what the offense is doing. He has a quick processor. He's not like going to run in the 4.3s. I think he ran a 4.5, but he's fast enough to keep up with most guys down the sideline and that sort of thing. Some of those high-end twitchy guys can give him some problems, but I think his quick trigger to come downfield and play physical just really, really matches up for playing in the slot. I think it's interesting because I think he's a better zone corner than a man corner. So that's kind of interesting that's the style the Browns went with this year, just because they play more man. Now we'll talk on Tuesday about some of the evolutions that we'll see from the Browns defense after Jim Schwartz kind of spoke on those things on Thursday. But I just think he can play man, he can play zone. I think he fits in with a lot of things, and his physicality and length at the position and his ability to just come crashing downhill on some of those screens, tight end dump offs and run plays. I just think he has the physical traits to become a pretty decent starter at slot corner.
Yeah, it's the physical traits, but it's also the mentality, the aggressiveness that you speak of, dude. Because to play slot corner, especially in something like the AFC North, you got to have some get down and dirty to you, some grittiness, and he has that, man. He's a willing participant in the run defense, like you said, dump offs to running back. So running back might be Derrick Henry. Just Myles Harden's not going to slow down. He's going to pull the trigger, try to get through his legs. You know what I mean? So, yeah, he possesses everything that you want to see. And I know he played outside primarily in college, but that's college instead of lower level college. The lacking of the top end speeds what probably kicks him inside, to be honest with you.
Yep.
But he's got good short area quickness, a great nose for the football, and plays with a really nasty temperament, which I like out of all my football players. I don't like finesse guys. I like guys who are want to put their face mask right in your chest, and Myles Harden's that dude.
There's a few traits that I really like. I was trying to look up as Jacob was talking how many interceptions Myles Harden had in college, because when you watch a bunch of, there's not an abundance of Myles Harden film out there, but the stuff that you do see, there are frequent interceptions. It really seems like he's got a knack for picking quarterbacks off, and I love seeing that out of him. And secondly, you guys have mentioned like the physical part. I think when you watch Myles Harden play, you can see that he seeks the contact. He likes the physicality. There's something about, like, when he makes those types of tackles, like, you can see that he takes a lot of pride in that. He's flexing that, and I think that's a unique trait that he has that he brings to the cornerback room. It's no secret, Denzel Ward's had his share of concussions, and he's not he's not the physical corner in there, right? And I'm not sure that I would describe Greg Newsome that way either, but it's like Harden brings that type of mentality, and those.
We've seen Martin Emerson be that guy to a high successful rate.
Right. And so, you're adding another type of that personality in there. And I love that. I feel like it fits really well with what the cornerback room is. And I definitely expect Myles Harden to contribute to this room. I definitely do.
And don't forget the 5 touchdowns the last 3 years that he's scored.
Yeah. And so there's some ball hawk in there. I was trying to find. I'm not sure. It's harder to find for whatever reason that level of
his stats. Like stats are pretty hard to find. You can pretty well get the PFF numbers that they put out and some of that stuff on the draft profile, but it can get hard to find some of the other stuff. Yeah. One thing that really sticks out to me is this is a guy that kind of worked his tail off. He was a 0-star recruit. Like in 2020, coming out of high school, he was a 0-star recruit, and then he makes the 2020 all freshman team for FCS schools. So like immediately steps on the field, and is a good enough contributor that at his level of competition, he made the all freshman team. You're like, okay, cool. You were just a 0-star recruit like 6 months ago. All right. Anybody you listen to talk that has experience around him in college at South Dakota will tell you like this dude will work his ass off. Like this dude will show up day in, day out, give you everything he can on the field, go home, come back, do it again tomorrow. But one thing, he was in 2023, he was FCS All-American, first team from a couple of different organizations, and then he was third team by the AP All FCS, and then he was first team all MVFC, which would be his conference that he played in college. So you're talking about a guy that actually had a couple of season-ending injuries, including in 2022, and then he just comes back and plays the best football of his career. And what I heard was there was some opportunities to go to some D1 schools. There were some opportunities for Harden to transfer, and it sounds like he was that kind of guy that's like, no, I'm finishing what I started, and he stayed where he was committed to, and went out there and had the best season of his career. And I think that's the kind of guy you want in your locker room.
I want to circle back to something you said earlier in that he was a 0-star recruit.
Yeah.
Essentially, that's what he is as a 7th-round pick. So he has experience coming in with no one believed in me. This one team gave me a shot. I'm going to give them everything. So I think that bodes well for his transition into the league and understanding that he has to prove himself on the field. And I just feel this team's at a really good spot because there is this Greg Newsome thing that's kind of overhanging over everything. Mm-hmm. In the 5th-round option, the 5th-year option. So he's on the books for next year. We don't know if that'll come to fruition. We've seen other players get the tag and get moved before that happens. But then between Cam Mitchell and Myles Harden, you have 2 solid slot candidates, young up-and-coming players. You know what I mean? So they're stocking the cupboard with that style of player just for the eventuality because you don't know what's going to happen. You mentioned Denzel Ward. Denzel Ward, heaven forbid, he gets another concussion or an injury that keeps him out for an extended period of time. You can slide Greg out there, and then between those 2 players, you feel good at what you even have. Even this year. Yep. So this is a good team building exercise as far as the way they are looking at that room, the future of that room, and kind of bringing players up to be ready to step in case that needs to happen.
Well, how many times have we talked about in draft season, Andrew Berry drafting a year early? He's not drafting for a position he needs to fill this year, but Newsome may not be here next year. And I'm not saying that's the route they go, but it's a possibility. Mm-hmm. And now with Cam Mitchell and Myles Harden, with one of them will have 2 years in the system, the other one will have 1. Mm-hmm. You potentially have a replacement if that's the route you have to go.
If they show you enough, then you feel confident about being more aggressive trying to shop Newsome.
Right.
If you're not sure in them, then you're not looking to move off a guy. But if you have something that could work, then it might improve your odds of being aggressive to move on from that player.
Yep.
I love the future planning because I know, so I've been you mentioned Browns Film Breakdown. I've been listening to their reviews of Browns draft classes, mm-hmm. and just the way that when they drafted Martin Emerson, I remember there were a lot of other Browns needs at the time, so people were questioning the pick. But it's like when you I get it, right?
Me too. Yeah.
It was no secret. I think at the time Jacob and I were very pro George Pickens. We talked a lot about him and about the Browns' potential need at wide receiver. And he's been good for Pittsburgh too. But the point is, you draft Martin Emerson and he comes into this room and it's like you could see the future plan because you've got Denzel Ward paid and you've just a year removed at that time from spending a first round pick on Greg Newsome, but Emerson comes in and he's so good that it changes the plan of the room and it gives you so much more flexibility. I don't even know if Andrew Berry would have said it at the time that he would have felt like Emerson was going to end up being the second corner and they were going to move Newsome inside. But the point is, when you guys are talking about the future plan of the quarterback room and that type of thing, if you can do that again, suddenly you give yourself just that much more ability. Like I will never forget 2019 when I believe it was legitimately the entire starting cornerback room all had hamstring injuries and they missed collectively about a month.
Yeah.
That sounds accurate.
So just thinking disaster scenario and thinking just like from a building, like we're really starting to see these rooms get built, right? It's not just one or two guys that you're relying on. You're saying to yourself, we've got guys here that disaster scenario, or maybe they just play their ass off and they get more playing time because of it. Like there's a lot of potential there, and I love that. I love seeing that, and I think that Myles Harden is just like Cam Mitchell last year had a not a ton of opportunities, but a couple.
He was good,
significant plays. I still think about him tackling Justin Fields on that fourth down. They got the Browns the ball back, and they ended up winning that game. Right, so it's like if you get a couple of those moments from Myles Harden next year, that's a huge win.
I want to piggyback off what you just said, though, and because obviously we have faith in the player itself and the skill set that he brings and the vision for what he could be. But how much of this is also based on the fact that Andrew Berry is damn good at drafting cornerbacks?
Oh, that's where a lot of my faith comes from. Yeah.
Same. So that is a position they've been able to dial in on and really forecast what the player could be at the next level. Some positions they've had a more difficult time, but cornerback, they just keep this conveyor belt rolling. And we knew they were going to draft him. We didn't know when. I didn't think it would be as late as the seventh round, but here we are.
Well, it's like when I look at his strengths versus his weaknesses, I'm usually, in my opinion, with it being a Browns corner, I worry more about what he can do versus his negatives. Like he should have more ball production than he had. He gets his hand on the ball a lot more than he actually intercepts it. Mm-hmm. So like, you're like, man, that kind of sucks. But I'm like, well, the way Cleveland coaches up their DBs and whatnot, they'll coach him out of that. He'll figure that out. They'll put him on the jugs machine. Sometimes him sinking his hips and transitioning out of his back pedal, it's a little slow. And then I'm like, oh, wait. All of those things are kind of technical. And then I'm like, okay, all right. He's not a super good he's not, he's a 4-5 guy, not a 4-3 guy. And you're like, well, then they won't put him in positions where they need him to be a 4-3 guy. They'll just put him in position. That's the type of stuff with Andrew Berry in the Browns regime in their fifth fucking year. Like I think about that a lot when I'm doing these, when we're wrapping this series up and this is the fifth of 6 of this series. And it's just like, I think about that a lot. And I'm like, okay, but like, look at some of these draft picks. Like they're not all going to be superstars. And like, people want to say, they talk about, he hasn't drafted a Pro Bowl, whatever, all this, but like almost all of these draft picks have at some point been a starter because they have gotten there. They have gotten there. I mean, you start going through it, like Jacob, there's plenty of guys that didn't work out, but a lot of these guys have gotten on the field and at least made some plays here and there. And for me, it's like I almost look past the negatives and just assume we're going to get the positives when we talk about corners in this regime. Cam, because think about it. Only one of them was a first-round pick. Only one of them was a second-round pick. In terms of corners, it was just Greg Newsome. He's the only high pick that they made at corner. Yep. Martin Emerson's a third-rounder. Cam Mitchell's a fifth-rounder. Like in those, and Martin Emerson, I still don't get it. There was a weird, stupid, dumb article that said they needed to upgrade from Martin Emerson and sign Stephon Gilmore. That was a thing I read this week. He doesn't get the respect he deserves. He's really freaking good, man. And he was drafted in the 3rd round, and nobody in this fan base had a fucking clue who he was.
Yeah. wasn't on my radar at all. But just his rookie year, he had the best completion percentage against him on the team. Last year, he was top 3 in like massive categories: quarterback rating when targeted, completion percentage allowed. Dude gave up 0 touchdowns. You know what I mean? Like, he should have been a Pro Bowler last year. To me, it was a travesty he didn't. I fully expect that this year. Maybe that narrative will change because inside Brown's Twitter, inside the bubble, we know that they are great at this position. That they really dial in. Now, nationally, that might not be the thought process. That's the reason you're getting articles about moving on from Martin Emerson. Martin Emerson's a franchise cornerstone.
Yep.
I feel 1,000,000%. I'm all in on Martin Emerson. If I could buy more stock, I would. If any of you are looking to get rid of your Martin Emerson stock, send it my way.
We'll take it.
We will take it. The 23 in Cleveland is just so fitting. I see it behind you, Jacob. I think I got to follow suit and get one.
It does. It's crazy. Oh, that's the wrong way. It's over here. Everything's inverted. So like looking on the screen, it's that way. Like that's, right. But it's actually over, it looks like it's that way, but it's over there. Like it's like.
But Nick always has it down. When Nick points at us, he's pointing the right way. He's got the inversion down, man.
I figured. I've gotten better.
He does it every episode. Like
over the course
he signs
of time,
off.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
He signs off every episode with it. Hell, it doesn't matter if there's 5 people on screen. He'll figure it out.
We're working on it.
He does it every episode. Like it's like I thought about this the other day. This podcast is over 3 years old at this point.
Yeah, we're a toddler at this point.
Like we're about to go to preschool, baby.
Yeah,
we're about to fucking preschool. I think about that. What do we think? What do you think we're on? Like, we're like over oh man, we gotta be like 200 episodes, maybe. I don't know.
You're probably pushing it.
I mean, we've had 3 different YouTube channels, so you can't go back and see them all. And we don't talk about the early days when I every like 4 or 5 minutes I would just be like this. Well,
Yeah, that the original internet was that was an obstacle, but we have overcome them.
Yeah, that apartment internet, because it was like the internet was included in our rent. So it was like routers for entire buildings, and it could do a lot of things. Like it could stream, but like when it came to like, it could stream like Netflix, but when it came to me streaming, it had its issues. So, gentlemen, I have an important question for you as we wrap up this show, and it has absolutely nothing to do with football.
Okay.
You guys watched Invincible?
No.
Holy shit.
No.
Listen, Casey, do you want me to tell you why you should watch Invincible?
I am fully aware that I'm missing out on it, but lay it on me. I've been told by multiple people, so I take your recommendations seriously.
It's The Boys.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
Cartoon version of The Boys.
It's an anime version of The Boys. Uh-huh. And see, I told you I was going to get you into anime.
Is this the gateway drug?
It is. I will show you this. I'll show you a clip from the first episode right after we get done with this.
Invincible. What is Invincible on?
Prime.
I'll show you. I'll show you guys after we wrap this up.
Okay. Which, speaking of, if you have Amazon Prime, you can subscribe to the Twitch channel for free.
Flawless.
3 guys here chase dreams, which would mean a lot to us.
Twitch.tv, the Barking Browns.
Twitch.tv, which you could also be entered to win a hat, a really sexy hat.
We're announcing that this afternoon.
We are announcing that this afternoon. So by the time you hear this, we'll have a winner. But possibly. I just want to say thank you to everybody for all your support, because YouTube especially keeps going up and up and up. And people are supporting us on Twitch, and you guys are following us on Twitter. So thank you all for all of that. As we work our way, because we've got one more draft pick, and then we've got an entire conclusion of the Browns draft class, which is kind of crazy to think about. Yeah. With all of that being said, this has been a Myles Harden film breakdown review of the Barking Browns Show. I'm Nick. He's Jacob. That's Casey. Go Browns. Still figure it out.